Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back to another episode of All the Kings Men. I'm Jesse Cohen. Joining me today, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, we have some news. We're not BSing this one. We actually have something to talk about.
Yeah, so by now, I'm sure anybody watching this is aware that Peter Laviolette has been named the newest head coach of the LA Kings. And my very first thought, Zach, and I've already spoken to a bunch of people about this, including my dad. My very first thought was, okay, had the announcement been the LA Kings are going to retain DJ Smith as head coach, there would be no way for Kings fans to know if the Kings had conducted a thorough and extensive search for a new head coach. Like, they might have said they did, but we wouldn't know because it would have been, just retaining the interim head coach that was previously holding the job. Because the hire is Peter Laviolette, I think it's fair to say as Kings fans, okay, the Kings absolutely did a thorough and reaching search for, like, we don't know how many people they interviewed, but Ken Holland talked about wanting to talk to 5 to 8 people.
Yep.
The list of names that made it out into circulation is about 5 to 8 people long. So you go, okay, this looks very much like they did what they said they were going to do. It's an outside hire. They're not promoting an assistant. They're not retaining an interim. They went outside of the organization. And much like when Ken Holland was hired, they hired somebody who, if you're just going by resume, I think is pretty hard to criticize.
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely validates the process in that there was one. I agree with what you said there. I mean, if it's possible the Kings could have gone through this process and still settled on DJ Smith, but no matter what, we wouldn't know. I mean, we certainly wouldn't know. And the last time the Kings hired a head coach, it was Jim Hiller, who was an internal candidate. We didn't know, right? Did they talk to nobody else? Did they talk to 10 other people in that time? Ultimately, it's who you believe, and it's ultimately like we don't know the inner workings there. Right. Here, I mean, I probably heard about 8 names total, some that were publicly out there, some that weren't. Laviolette on paper, like you said, is probably the beefiest resume. Certainly the beefiest resume in terms of instant gratification, and in terms of overall success, right? He's won the Stanley Cup in Carolina. He's been to the Cup final with 3 different teams, been to the conference final with 4 different teams. So he's had success in different eras, had success with different organizations. It's probably the best they could have done, right? Like, obviously Bruce Cassidy's a name you would have liked to have had in the mix. He was not an option due to reasons outside the Kings' control. So I think overall, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it. We'll see how it goes, but I think you're right. I think it's a pretty solid choice based on, like you said, the resume.
And at the timing of this recording, we have not yet had a chance to talk to, the media, have not yet had a chance to talk to Peter Laviolette. So there are all sorts of questions that remain, unasked and unanswered. But what is being reported is that he has been given a 3-year contract. And given the length of Ken Holland's reported contract, given the length of Artemi Panarin's contract, given the timeline that the Kings presently find themselves on, 3 years makes a ton of sense to me.
Same. Um, Peter Laviolette has come in everywhere he's gone and improved teams in year one.
Yep.
That success hasn't always translated to, say, year five. And I think 3 years is a big win for the Kings. I went back, I looked at all six of his last stops. That team in all 6 years improved in year one regular season points percentage, and five of the six teams improved their playoff standing, either going from non playoff to playoff, from making the playoffs to winning a round, to winning multiple rounds, to reaching the final, to winning the Stanley Cup in Carolina. Like they've always improved everywhere he's gone. But you also have to then say, okay, well, why is he available? Right? Like if he's that unbelievable, he probably wouldn't have been an option. And it always hasn't translated for him. There's been times where he's also been relieved of his duties midseason in a couple of different places. And that's usually been in the latter half of his time there. It's not been, okay, he wins in year one, he stinks in year two, and then he's relieved of his duties. That was the case in New York, where he only lasted the 2 years. But a lot of places, it's been those last several years. And that's a theme around the NHL, right? The average shelf life of a coach is not 6 years anymore. It's like 2 or 3. It's substantially less. So I think the 3-year term makes a ton of sense for the Kings for that reason.
And I mean, I've mentioned this in various different places in various different ways. I'm not sure I believe in a quote unquote good coach or bad coach anymore, because you look at the Peter Laviolettes of the world, or the Bruce Cassidys, or whoever, and you look at their resumes and it's like fired, right?
Yeah.
Everybody gets fired. You know, you win the Coach of the Year award and you're almost just as likely to be fired the following year as you are to be, back in the playoffs. So that doesn't particularly sway me. The track record does. And like you said, what he's known for is coming in and immediately improving a team in seasons 1 and 2. And then, we'll see what happens after that. But like we said, outside of Mikey Anderson and Adrian Kempe, I'm not sure there's a lot of Kings players, under contract for longer than 3 or 4 years.
It would be hard. This franchise could go so many ways in the next 3 to 4 years that, like, predicting 3 years from now is kind of a fool's errand, right? Like, for better or for worse, this thing could go so many different ways in that time. Laviolette's going to have a hand in that, but to say he's the right coach for this team in 3 years, I don't know if he is or not, and really nobody does with how many unknowns there are.
I don't know if he's the right coach for this team in October, but we'll find out.
Totally, I have no idea.
The other thing that it confirms is, not that we needed any confirmation of this, but Ken Holland was pretty clear in his media availability that a rebuild was off the table. Right, that this organization is interested in pressing forward and winning, and if that is the tact you are going to take, and that is the philosophy you are going to promote, Peter Laviolette is that's the hire for that 100%. Decision. That's the hire.
Mm-hmm. And one of the knocks on him in the past in other markets, from what I've read, is maybe the integration of younger players into the mix. The LA Kings don't really have a ton of young players.
No,
there aren't 3 to 4 players who are 21 years old who you are saying we have to find spots for these guys right now. The Kings have veteran players, and like I don't think Quinton Byfield's a young player. I don't think Brandt Clarke, by this definition, is a young player. They have multiple years in the NHL. Those guys are core players for this team. There's no, are we going to or not play Brandt Clarke? You better play Brandt Clarke. He has to be a part of the mix. It's not like Brandt Clarke of 2 years ago where you're working him in. So I don't really think that that's a factor for this Kings team right now.
No, and listen, I'm starting to be annoyed of the sound of my own voice when it comes to conversations like this, because I feel like every time I'm asked questions, my answer is always like, well, I don't know. Well, this is why they play the games. But I mean, to me, the biggest questions now are, who are the assistant coaches going to be? Because I was looking through Peter Laviolette's track record, and Kevin McCarthy seems like the most likely candidate, just based on how many times they've worked together in the past and who's currently not employed coaching a different team.
Saw that too.
But then also, Peter Laviolette's style of play, he has experience with Panarin and Fiala, so I'm not too curious about how his style of play meshes with the forward grouping, but how does his style of play mesh with the current D-core that the Kings have? Because part of the double-edged sword of going with an outside hire is this roster has been constructed in the shape of the organizational philosophy for the better part of at least 8 years. Peter Laviolette
And yeah,
is a deviation from that philosophy. So how much will you ask Laviolette to, conform to the prior philosophy? How quickly can you conform the roster to Peter Laviolette's philosophy? And these are questions that I'm sure will get brought up when he speaks to the media and, at training camp and a million times moving forward. But to me, that's the biggest question. Is he likes to play Peter Laviolette on the spectrum between Hiller and Smith is a lot closer to the way Smith had the team playing than Hiller. But I would say probably even beyond Smith, right? If you
yeah.
move past Smith on the spectrum.
It's more like DJ Smith is in between Peter
Yes,
Laviolette
exactly.
and
Yeah.
Jim Hiller.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, okay, if he likes defensemen to jump up in the play, well, who's going to do it?
Right.
Are we going to see a green light for Mikey Anderson to jump up more, or are we going to see the Kings, try and reshape the blue line? Because there aren't a ton
I
of
think
options.
it's got to be a bit of a combination of both, right?
I would think so,
I was
yeah.
reading, about Peter Laviolette's time in New York, and he said there's a quote where it was like, there is not different sets of rules for different players. There is just one set of rules. And that means that when the opportunity is there, Mikey Anderson has to jump up into the rush.
Right.
If that's the guy on the ice and that's the situation there, he can't just not go because it's not necessarily his best part of his game. He has to be able and willing to do that. But with that being said, the Kings need to change the makeup of their blue line, and they probably needed to do that a little bit anyway. Ken Holland said it outright. We had him on the Insider Show a few weeks ago. He said that is a point of emphasis this summer, is evaluating the makeup of the blue line.
Yeah.
I don't think you and I would disagree that blue line lacked puck movement. I don't think anyone who watched would disagree with that.
No.
There are a lot of ways to go about doing that. You can't just shift out 5 guys and bring 5 guys. It's not going to be that drastic, but one way or another, regardless of who was hired as head coach, I think the Kings need to, they wound up with too much of the same thing on their back end. And I think that they certainly need to be evaluating the makeup of that group going forward. Probably more than just one guy too. They probably need a couple of changes there to truly get it to where they need to get to.
Can you read that quote back again?
I have to look up the exact words, but it was not, there's not one set of rules for this player because he plays a certain way and not another set of rules for this player because he plays a certain way. There's one set of rules that everyone has to adhere to.
So that is also contrary to public statements made by the last 3 head coaches of the LA Kings. Todd McClellan, I think the way Todd McClellan said it was, not everything is equal, but everything is fair. I might be flubbing the line.
You treat every player fairly, not every player equally.
Yes,
was Todd's
and then Jim Hiller was less blunt about it, and then DJ Smith just basically came out and said Panarin's not going to play defense, and you live with it. That doesn't seem like Peter Laviolette's MO.
And to be fair, this was specifically talking about style of play of defensemen.
Yes.
The quote I'm referencing is specific to the way that the style of play of defensemen. It was an article about, basically it was like, okay, you have Adam Fox, who is known to play one way, and then you have, Ryan Lindgren, who plays a different way. And the quote was about with these players, they all have to be able to play this way. And it might suit some more than others, and you're going to, it's not going to be, but everyone has to be able to do these things to play the way that he wants to play.
Well, then they're gonna make some changes then. Another thing he's known for is special teams improvement, and that, I again, it's really just comes down to this overwhelming organizational philosophy of defense first. Are we seeing a changing of the guard, or are we going to see Laviolette make concessions to his preferred style? And I suspect we won't really know until training camp
True.
And of course, this is the one season with a new head coach where we get the fewest amount of preseason games we've ever gotten because of the new 84 game
Yeah,
schedule.
seriously.
But I'm sure we'll figure it out pretty quickly, and I'm sure they'll address it on when the media gets a chance to
Yeah.
talk to Laviolette.
And there might have to be a little bit of both, right? Like if you
Uh,
can't maybe get the ideal makeup, maybe there do have to be some concessions, right? Like of to adapting to the players that you have. And I think that's what a good coach does. I mean, a stubborn coach might say, this is what we're doing, whether I have the pieces or not. That doesn't strike me as who Peter Laviolette is, because I don't think you succeed in different places as he has without adjusting a little bit to the personnel that you have. Like it's unlikely that he had the exact same dudes and types of players in every place he's coached. I haven't
right.
looked. I have to imagine there's been some deviation there. But ultimately, yeah, it's special teams. You bring it, like it has to be better. Like it was awful last year.
Yeah.
No way around it. I'm doing these season in reviews on LA Kings Insider, and it's like every player who was on the penalty kill, it just keeps coming up as like they're just shipping out goals against. I was like, well, it's not on any one guy, but it's been in the trending down for me in every single, like everyone who's been on there, because it was just so substandard last year. And the power play had some moments. It was productive in the playoffs, but it just was so far. It wasn't where it needed to be. And you look at a team that didn't score goals. Well, the power play is number one in that area of where they need to score more. So that probably comes down somewhat to him, somewhat to what his staff looks like. But yeah, it is a little bit against the grain, and it's an outside hire, no matter how you spin it. And his teams have played differently than the Kings have played in the past. And it'll be interesting, like you said, to see how something's got to give, right? It can't necessarily be both. It'll be interesting to see kind of where the philosophy of the team goes next year.
Yeah, they're kind of mutually exclusive. On the forward side, though, outside hire, yes, but if you are going to go into a season with Artemi Panarin and Kevin Fiala both on the roster, and presumably, not necessarily, but presumably Kevin Fiala will be playing a second line role to our I can't speak today, to Artemi Panarin's top line role. If you are going with an high forecheck, high octane offense with Panarin on the top line and Fiala on the second line, there's only one guy out there who knows both of them. So I am excited, maybe too strong a word. I am highly interested to see what this specific coach can do with this specific combination of forwards. We still don't necessarily know who the second line, or first line for that matter, center will be. Presumably one of them will be Quentin Byfield. But yeah, I mean, it's now all of a sudden, like, so a lot of the questions have been sent to me so far today have been like, oh, what do you think of the hire? Would you rather have seen this coach or that coach or this coach or that coach? And my attitude is kind of like, well, I need to see what the roster looks like. Like I don't believe that, any coach in the world can come in and take over any roster and just by the virtue of like, oh, this coach is such a good coach that they could win the Stanley Cup with a bunch of, with a bantam team from, New Mexico, or, some non-traditional hockey, not trying to pick on New Mexico, but like, I just don't believe in that. So, coaches need players. And you look at Laviolette and a lot of his success, and you look at his track record, and it's like, okay, well, he had a goalie in 2006, no goalie in 2010, and I don't really remember 2017 all that well, but
I think he had a pretty good goalie there.
Yes, yeah, he did. I don't remember what happened. So, well, I guess that was the Penguins team, but like, you need players, is my point. So so the Kings have a coach. That's great. They get him in before the draft. They get him in before free agency. Now a philosophy can start to form, and that philosophy can then can be implemented when it comes to shaping the roster, changing the roster, molding the roster, and that is the correct sequence of events from my perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about like Artemi Panarin. I mean, his best year offensively came with Peter Laviolette as the head coach, right? Mm-hmm. Under Peter Laviolette, I know the Rangers weren't as good in 24-25, but Panarin was still good. Like his two highest years in goals came with the 2 years that he played under Laviolette. And the strength of the team right now, if they had to play a game tomorrow, it's the wings. Like the best players, the deepest position group by far, and the highest end skill is on the wings. Yeah. I think while the defense needs revamping and the centers need some guys who play center. The wings are probably about as good as we've seen here in a long time, right? You look at the high end players like Panarin, Fiala, Kempe. Laferriere is a very good, if he's your wing 4, you're really good there. Trevor Moore, if he's your wing 5, you're really good. Like they are really set at the wings. No matter, you just got to shake them out how they fit best. It's these other positions where you need additions. But if you want a higher scoring team, which the Kings have to be, it's not a bad place to start that you have guys who can score and you have more of them than maybe you've had in the past. And now you have a coach who seems to uptick the scoring of the teams that he joins. So those are all trending in the right direction, but this is step 1 in a multi-step process. And I think for Ken Holland, now the harder work begins of you now have to, this roster has to be improved to meet maybe the demands that Laviolette style brings, but simply it just has to get a little bit better. Like it's not gonna, you can't run the roster back regardless of coach and expect it to be totally differently. Like the Kings have to find some different players in certain areas, and they have to find a way to improve the team.
And, to be clear, I am being deliberately nitpicky about this, but we're recording this on June 8th. Barring extensions signed, between now and July 1st, come July 1st, Jacob Muverari, Brant Clark, Jeff Malott, Scott Laughton, Matthew Joseph, and Andrei Kuzmenko don't have contracts for next season. And Andrei Kopitar is retired. Like that's a lot of spots that need addressing. Now, hopefully some of them can be filled with the player mentioned, right? So like presumably Brant Clark returns on a contract.
And Brant Clark is, just for those who don't know, is a restricted free agent.
Yeah.
He's not, can't just go sign with any other team for free.
But I'm just saying, like, until it's done, it ain't done, right? Like, so.
Yeah, true.
And,
I think it's a little bit less than that though, when you think about it. Like a lot of those guys play depth roles.
Yep.
On the team. And you need players to play those roles, no doubt about it. But I think the big one is who replaces Andrei Kopitar at center, because not mentioned in what you just said too is the Kings don't have Phil Deneau, who they had at this time last year. They don't have Warren Fogle. And they didn't really replace those guys in season. They replaced Deneau with Laughton, who is, as you mentioned, a UFA, but they are down other guys too. Corey Perry's not here from where he was. So like it's different roles that need to be replaced, and that doesn't even factor in outgoings, right? It's hard to say, okay, the Kings can't really make changes to their group of defensemen without trading someone, because the other 5 players are under contract for next year. And Brant Clark plays a style that you probably don't want to replace. You want to get more guys who can do some of those things. So it's not just saying, okay, the Kings have to add A, B, and C. They also probably have to subtract somewhere along the way in order to find the space to add A, B, and C, which makes it that much more work. But I think it's a little bit different than just saying, okay, these guys are gone, we have to fill their spots. They actually probably need more people to go out, and that'll be interesting to see who that is and who they're then able to bring in to fill some of those spots as well.
But even in the list of players who are outgoing or don't have contracts, let's just talk about Laughton, for example. So if Laughton were to re-sign and to come back, you then have Byfield, Laughton, Hellenius, and Turcotte, I suppose, as your centers. And you need to find one replacement for Andrei Kopitar. And we all concede that, like, you're not trying to replace peak Andrei Kopitar, you're trying to replace, you're looking for a competent second line center at some point. However, if Laviolette's style of play doesn't jive with Scott Laughton's skill set, then it becomes a question of, well, which gets priority? The path of least, we know he's familiar, we know him, he's popular in the locker, like we know the intangibles. The player eval we did with Jim Fox essentially was like foot speed not great, locker room presence, beyond reproach. So if Laviolette needs guys who can move their feet, well, how difficult is it to now replace 2 centers versus
it's pretty hard.
Stuff just cascades. And so then,
you've looked at the same list as me, right? it's
Yeah.
not flush
Yes.
with
No.
top six centers.
No, but then that might
So
be more pieces going out to get more players back in trades. Like maybe,
yeah, yeah,
maybe you have to make some sort of huge dynamite. I can't think of a team that might be looking to move, 3 centers and 4 defensemen, but
right. I think
maybe.
that I don't think it's going to be hard to find a third line center. I think it's going to be much. It's going to be this is like it's going to be hard to find a second line center.
Yeah.
Those players are hard to find, right? Um, Especially because there aren't a ton of teams just looking to give them up. So you have to give things like you said out in order to get
Hmm.
that player. So the best way to fill that position is probably via trade, which means you have to match that value going out, and that'll be tricky too. I mean, the prospect pool isn't exactly flush with blue chippers. So you have one presumably coming in the draft this year. You have a Henry Brustevich. You have some good, second tier type prospects. You have Jared Woolley. You have the goaltenders. You have Sihar. You have guys like that. But it's gonna take some probably maneuvering to be able to fill some of these positions. And I think regardless of coach, I think it's definitely going to be a very interesting few weeks. And it could happen before July 1st too, right? Like you can
Yep.
make trades
Hmm.
whenever at this point. It's not contingent on waiting till the cup final ends. There's things could happen. And then you have to assume that, especially now with the coach locked in, that is the, priority numbers 1, 2, and 3 are those types of decisions.
And to be clear, another part of this is like it's one thing to go out and replace Kopitar or to find a third line center to do the things you need to do. The young players that are on the roster, Byfield, LaFerriere, and Clark, they need to keep getting better.
For sure.
Like there can't be another season where Quentin Byfield goes into the last month of the season with 17 goals and it's a
Yep.
collar tugger on whether or not he's going to reach 20, and then he goes on a
Hmm.
little, like it cannot be that. Like he has to be better. Brant Clark, I'm not trying to pick on Brant Clark. Brant Clark's been coming along just fine, but like at some point, if you want defensemen that can jump up and join the play and can do all these things, and Brant Clark's the one guy that can do it, he can't be 31st. Well, actually, it's better than I thought it was. 31st in the league in scoring amongst defensemen. He's got to be in the top 15 or 20. Like these guys have to get better. And same thing with LaFerriere. I'm not picking on LaFerriere. LaFerriere has come along quite well, quite nicely, but like that 20 goals
Yeah.
it's got to increase. It just has to.
These guys are all good players, and the Kings
Yeah.
need them to become great players.
Yep.
Like Quentin Byfield's production is that of it's a good second line center.
Yeah.
Right? Like no on most teams that's good second line center production. It's maybe unfair, but the Kings need more than that from him this year. Whether he's ready or not, the Kings need more than 25 goals, 25 assists, 50 points. They need more. Like simple as that. LaFerriere, look at the scoring chances, the high danger chances. He's a top 10 player in the league and has been for 2 years in a row. Individual high danger, individual scoring. He leads the Kings by a wide margin and compares to like 30, 40 goal scorers around the league. Now he needs to be a 30 goal scorer. The Kings need him to take that jump as well, right? From 20 goals to 30 goals. I think he can do it, but he has to do it. Brant Clark, I think some within his control, some outside of it, but people still want him to play more. But he played a lot last year. Like his usage took a pretty steep uptick. I still think he could play more, but you're right. He has to produce more than he did. And the Kings were 32nd in goals from their defensemen last year. I think maybe it was 32nd in goals or 32nd in points. They're bottom 5 in both. They need more from Brant Clark, and that has to come with some goals too. It can't just be the assists. A big knock on him was he's got to improve the shot, and that's all part of it. These are 3 really good players. The Kings need them to become, core impact players. And I think the Andre Kopitar sized excuse or fallback or safety net is no longer there. And I think it's time that these guys become those players for the Kings.
And another area that, who knows how much impact Peter Laviolette will have, but I think his presence changes the conversation. This organization, because of the way they play, anytime a new goaltender comes in, one of the first questions asked is, hey, Kings play a goalie-friendly system.
Yeah.
Will that help you, right? Whether it was Riddick, Talbot, Kemper, Forsberg, whoever, Copley, right? Like anytime the new
Yep.
goalie would show up, that question came up. Laviolette also has coached Kemper before in Washington. But so now you have a situation where Kemper and Forsberg are both under contract for this coming
Yeah.
season. Kemper, started out strong last year after a really strong performance 2 years ago. But how do the goalies, if Laviolette changes the system and you now have a system that isn't quite as friendly to the goalies, and like that would be a question, I guess, for Mike Buckley. Like, do you have the right goalies for the system that you are now trying to play? And who knows? That's why they play the games. Like I said, just going to keep repeating myself on that front. But
And it's another area that could factor in when it comes to other positions, right?
mm-hmm.
You have both those guys for one more year, but is Forsberg Kemper your tandem going into camp? Or
Right.
is one of them maybe included in a move that
Right.
helps you bring in someone else potentially, or matches salary, or whatever it is? Today, I mean, it's an open net, right? Today, between the two of those guys.
I'm not to be argumentative, but is it? I just assume it's Kemper's just because we know why he lost it last year. And I would assume with an additional, yes, but I mean, like even I spoke to Bill Ranford about it and on All the King's Men, and it was I was like, I don't think anybody's trying to pretend that collision with Rantanen didn't impact Kemper's season.
Yeah.
And so now you add on an extra 4 months or whatever it is of recovery time, plus his reduced playing time down the stretch. And I just assume, listen, Forsberg came in and was great, and I mean, he really was. But I don't know. I just assume, maybe I'm assuming, maybe it is, but I just feel like, oh yeah, it's Kemper's. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Feels wide open to me, mostly
Okay.
because of how Forsberg's year ended. If Forsberg's year ended like averagely and then Darcy was the same, and I think the best case scenario is that Darcy Kemper returns to form.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
that's what you want to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
But to me, it's like, hey, it's an open net because of how well Forsberg's season ended. He's coming in. Hey, he's got the chance to seize it. Now, maybe the split's the same, but I think it's at least a competition.
It's definitely a conversation, I guess, because,
Yeah.
What we can't have again, for a multitude of reasons, is a stumble out of the gate to start this season like they did last season. Mostly because I just don't know. I don't think it would negatively impact the room per se, but like I just feel like the conversation would get loud. If the team goes 3-5-2 in their first 10 games or something, the murmurs get loud real fast. If the goaltending doesn't show up and perform well out of the gate. Now, all of that assumes no massive changes to the roster. Obviously, if there are massive changes to the roster, I guess you buy yourself some what's the phrase I'm looking for? Some settling in time, right?
A grace period, some
leeway.
A
honeymoon period. Yeah, you sort of go like, all right, well, if next season's roster has more than 4 different players on it, that's like a pretty big chunk of the roster, and you go like, all right, well, guys need to learn. I mean, even if right off the bat, whoever centers Panarin and Kempe won't be the person who centered them last year.
For sure, yeah.
Whether it's Byfield or somebody else. So like right off the hop, that's going to be different. So, yeah.
And that's a high impact position, right? Like that's your top 6. I've personally never, and I've only been here, not as long around it as long as you. I've never seen those murmurs really impact the team.
No, I mean, I wouldn't expect they would.
Like everyone was pretty upset when the team started 1-5 this year, and that never seemed to seep in beyond social media.
No, the only fear is, and I don't think that it was an external. I don't think it was outside forces influencing inside forces, but in the 2018-19 season, it didn't start well, and you could see that it didn't start well from literally, and at the time I rolled my eyes at it and I said, this is silly. You can't know this from this. But from the rookie tournament that year, I think the team lost every game that year in the rookie tournament, and then I think they lost every preseason game. And a lot of fans were going, "What's happening? Like nothing is going right." And at the time, it was like, "That's silly. The rookie tournament has nothing to do with anything else. It's a completely separate, like, what do you call it when you partition your kids? It's completely partitioned from the rest. I feel like it doesn't have anything to do with anything." But then you look back on it and you go, "Oh, dark cloud over the entire, from September on
I would
through to,
I would maintain that is nothing to do with what happened that season, but
clearly it didn't. But I mean, but it's just one
now
of
the
those things where, like,
preseason
everything went wrong.
potentially did.
No, but that's what I'm really getting
Yeah.
at is that it was
Yeah.
clear from
I
training.
don't
camp
think the rookie
that
tournament
something-
with a bunch of dudes who didn't play for that team
No,
had anything
and
to do with
and
how
to
poorly
be
that
clear,
year went.
even after they traded Pearson for, I think it was Hagelin maybe, and
Carl
they fired,
Hagelin,
and like they made moves, and even then, even though it was fairly clear 20, 30, 40 games into the season, it was still like, well, maybe. I was like, no, this is done. So yeah, like I said, I don't think it's outside forces influencing inside forces. I just think, given at some point the murmurs do, like, they were louder than murmurs last year. Like, just
Right.
put it that way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I think this coming season has to get off. And you presumably you want to get off to a good start, right? Like, you need.
Totally,
We heard
yeah.
plenty of coaches say you need to bank those points early because you're not guaranteed them late, and it's just easier to win early than it is to.
Look at 23-24, right? Like they won the first, was it 12 road games, and
Mm-hmm.
those that gap dissipated real fast.
It sure
I mean
did.
that. So you're looking at a pretty different story. Even if they started averagely that year, they started, I think it was 16-4-4, and that team fired their coach 2 months after starting 16-4-4. So a good start would whether it matters or not, it would go a long way.
Yeah, and
towards
I wish
just
I
settling
knew,
everybody in.
So we all know that Laviolette has an immediate sort of new coach boost on his teams. I would love to go back and look and see what that trend.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at his first year in New York. It's win, loss, win, loss, win, win, win. Like, he had a 5-game win streak, 6-game win streak.
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6-game win streak. Starting on the 5th game of the season, his first year in New York. And
Now that's an interesting exercise.
Yeah, in Washington, he had win, win, shootout, loss, overtime, loss, win, shootout, loss, win, win, win. So that's 9 games in a row with points to start the season. His first year in Nashville, which was 2014-15, he had win, win, shootout, loss, win, overtime, loss, win, win. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 7 games in a row with points. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for here in LA, right? Like, okay, new coach, new roster, new face of the franchise. Let's go. Like, let's start racking up some wins. We won't know if it'll happen, but like we both said, if nothing else, the Kings stated publicly that they had a plan and this was the sequence of events that they wanted to follow. And so far, they have delivered on that. And I think that's basically all you can ask for, right? Like, we want a coach. We want a coach before the draft. We want, we're going to look at a number of names. Now we know they did, and they got their coach, and it's before the draft. It's before development camp. It's well before training camp. So biggest question of the offseason, I suppose, answered. And now we move on to the rest of them, which will begin getting answers as soon as Peter Laviolette talks to the media.
Yep, and should be, I think, Wednesday is the plan, and it'd be interesting to hear from him and interesting to hear from Ken Holland, because I think there are some important questions to be asked of both those guys, and it'll be interesting to see, what they have to say as it pertains to, honestly, work that probably needs to start immediately. When you look at the amount of time left and the changes that I think everyone would like to see be made.
Yeah, and Ken Holland previously said they plan on keeping the draft pick. Well, we'll see. We'll see if that changes at all as a result of this decision. Zach Dooley, thank you so much for joining me. Kings fans, thanks for watching. Keep your eyes and ears peeled, because I suspect a lot more news will be coming in the next days and weeks and months.